Las Vegas, Nevada, January 18, 1990. During a downpour that was much heavier than usual, the Las Vegas Fire Department was kept busy with numerous accidents caused by an overflowing flood channel. Just past midnight that same night, 26-year-old Murray Brown was at a local pool hall. He had moved to Las Vegas a month before to look for work in the booming housing industry. The game was on Murray's side that night, and he was also enthusiastic about some job prospects. When Murray decided to call it a night, he didn't know that he was leaving his luck in the pool hall. Driving home on an unfamiliar stretch of road, he swerved to avoid hitting something on the street and flipped over into the overflowing flood channel. A passing motorist called 911. For the firefighters who answered the call that night, only a miracle would keep this tragedy from claiming more victims. At first, there was no way to know whether there was someone in the car.
If someone was in the Jeep when it went over, we figured they probably weren't in it. They either got themselves out or was washed downstream.
A tow truck cable was hooked up to the Jeep and an attempt was made to lift it up. By now, the firefighters had to ignore the dangerous waters and find out if there was a victim pinned under the Jeep.
We felt the best way to do that was just go down in there and try to feel into the Jeep and see if you could feel a body. I attempted to do that, but with the force of the water moving as quickly as it was and the instant coldness, it was impossible. We lifted it from where it was upside down to one side.
And then, the tragic revelation.
They said, "Oh my God, there's somebody in the Jeep."
A pair of legs and white shoes just came floating to the surface. I'll never forget the white shoes. At that point in time, because the tow truck was having so much problem, we decided just to hold the vehicle tipped halfway and tie it off and try to perform a rescue.
Our big problem was how we were going to get this guy out of the Jeep, onto the bank, and we don't want to endanger any more people than we have to. We know that any fireman or emergency personnel that falls into this channel is going to get swept down the channel just like the victim would have.
But retrieving him was difficult as well as dangerous, so rescuers decided to tie a line to him and pull him across the flood channel. The victim had been underwater for over 30 minutes. When Captain Perry Horit jumped in to grab him, he was swept away. Miraculously, fireman Bill Combs was able to stop them both at the safety line.
Chief Horit had the victim straddled underneath his legs. And he screamed to Billy, "He's under me, I got him in my legs, I got him in my leg, get him."
It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done physically in my life, was to try to hang on to the rope and hang on to him.
Well, I reached around and I ended up getting the guy around the waist, but he was so big, I couldn't get my arm even halfway around the side of him. My arm would have had to rip off. Was no way I was going to let go of the rope.
Would this terrible night become more tragic? The rushing water was equal to 400 pounds of weight on Captain Horit as the other rescuers formed a human chain.
And so they could reach out and they grabbed him. And when they pulled him out, they pulled my legs out kind of from under me. I mean, I couldn't move. And the water had a hold of me.
Meanwhile, rescuers tended to the victim.
He was not breathing, his heart wasn't beating, he was dead.
At that time, I started to think about how long we were on the scene, how long it took us to get him out, and then no one knew how long he was in there. And I really thought at that time everything we did was in vain.
But firefighter Curtis Harper wouldn't give up.
I was on the gurney administering cardiac compressions. We determined from the run reports, from our arrival time at the scene, from the time we left the scene, that he was underwater for 36 minutes.
Not breathing, no heartbeat, you know. Basically, I thought we had recovered a body.
You know, when you fail, you think you failed at doing your job, you don't feel very good about it.
Then, the most incredible miracle happened.
En route to the hospital, we did in fact get a heartbeat, a blood pressure from the patient. That was amazing to me. That was absolutely amazing.
What was amazing about this case was the fact that he had been submerged for a long period of time, and in fact, they still had a detectable heartbeat.
I think that his guardian angel was looking over him that night.
Then another miraculous circumstance. A one-of-a-kind blood-warming machine was being tested at the University of Nevada Training Center.
We hooked catheters to the artery and vein in the leg, big arteries and veins, used his own heart to pump the blood into the machine through the artery, warmed it in the machine, returned it to the vein where it could go to his heart and lungs and warm his whole body again, very rapidly.
Although he was in a coma, Murray Brown was alive.
Murray Brown came to us almost dead. It was a miracle that they got him out.
And Murray Brown was living proof that miracles do happen.
First thing I remember is waking up in a hospital and having my parents present at the time. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I'm a young man and I don't always stop to smell the flowers. And now that I have a new lease, I think I'd like to stop and smell the flowers more often.
The whole series from the rescue to him going to the hospital to this amazing blood-warming machine that the doctor just happened to be in Las Vegas on that night.
I don't think this man would have survived without some help from the paramedics, a good trauma team, and help from above.